You are now listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report. This is Paul McGUIRE. On today's program, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of ETs, extraterrestrials, fallen angels, the invisible realm or the spiritual world, and more. I have been sequestered, if you will, taking a deep dive personally into doing a lot of research for preparation for more than one book and a film project that I'm working on that I really can't discuss the full ramifications of that, but that's what I've been doing. I've been deeply studying the Word of God, seeking God's face, going to original sources in manuscripts and books, going back into history to try to come up with an accurate framework for what the heck is going on. So let's just do a brief overview, and we've touched on these things on the Paul McGUIRE Report in recent weeks. So we have the Disclosure movie, which gave all kinds of information about UFOs or UAPs as they're now called, and all these so-called government witnesses and other witnesses who allegedly, and that's the operative word, allegedly saw UFOs or UAPs. Now, I have always been somewhat skeptical about the entire area, but you know, skepticism is fine, but when you encounter new facts, the new facts, if they are indeed facts, the new facts have to be analyzed. And if new facts suggest that there may be a different depth of answer, then you got to proceed accordingly. So that's a long way of simply saying, in order to do a deep dive properly, you have to be willing to take a deep dive. There's no shortcut. So I've been reading a lot and studying a lot. And this concept I've been dealing with personally. I haven't really talked about it publicly, but personally I've been talking about this to myself, talking to myself, you know, something you do, we all do. Because I was playing with the concept, the concept of an alien genesis, which is not really new. This goes back to the best-selling book, the popular book, Chariots of the Gods, written by a guy named von Daniken, which I was very interested in going back, you know, decades ago. I think von Daniken published his book, Chariot of the Gods, in the very early 60s, and it took off as a mega bestseller. And the proposal of Chariots of the Gods was simply this, that some kind of alien race visited planet Earth thousands of years ago, and this alien race of ETs traveling aboard UFOs impregnated human women, and which created a hybrid race between human women and aliens. And so as we travel towards our particular time period in history, so let's just call it post-Van Daniken, if we will. If we travel forward from Van Daniken's research, we see that the whole narrative that's like red hot right now, and that's why they're having the Disclosure movie, and then Steven Spielberg, the famous director, has in the middle of post-production on a big-time Hollywood feature film known as Day of Disclosure or Disclosure Day. And quite frankly, the trailer will grab you and shake you. The female actress who's in the trailer, and I assume she's one of the stars of the film, she was the co-star in at least one of Tom Cruise's big science fiction feature films. I think her name is Emily Blunt. And she, in the trailer, and this comes from the film Disclosure Day, she starts to talk to a group of journalists. It looks like it's a television studio. And as she's talking, she begins to blurt out these really weird words, like words you would never hear on planet Earth. She's blurting out this barrage of really weird words. And the first thing that came to my mind as I saw her doing this, and this is like a subconscious reaction, it instantaneously, and I'm not trying to make a derogatory statement regarding speaking in tongues. That's not the purpose or the intention of what I'm driving at here. But when Emily Blunt began to speak in this strange language, which was like coming up from her belly, and that's kind of almost the exact verbiage some people will use to describe, let's say, speaking in tongues. And she's blurting out these words, and it's almost as if it's somebody in a bizarre way, not the normal way, but in a bizarre way. It's a bizarre example of speaking in tongues. Again, there's no intention on my part. I'm not trying to attack people who speak in tongues. So, but what she's doing is so odd, and you'll see it when you see the trailer. And the reaction of the journalists in the room is odd. And so, why did I latch onto that? Because that really wasn't the primary theme that Spielberg was driving at. But I've noticed this more than once with Steven Spielberg. And that's simply this concept. And it may be a concept that Steven Spielberg has been brewing in his, we could say, spirit man or subconscious mind or whatever you want to call it, that place inside of us, the interior depths inside of us, when we're not consciously aware with our, let's say, rational, logical mind how we're proceeding, but somehow intuitively, somehow in our subconscious level, somehow in our spirit man, we're merging concepts. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, and I don't subscribe by any means to all of Jung's theories because many of Jung's theories are, in my opinion, out there. But that doesn't mean Jung didn't have selectively some good things to talk about. So Jung spoke of this phenomenon as the collective unconscious, that we all are connected to some kind of collective mind via frequencies or whatever. So in Spielberg's earlier sci-fi movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and I loved all these movies. You know, I am a science fiction fan, science fiction book fan, and I'm a science fiction movie fan. And for me, it's been a very good thing because it equipped me, science fiction in the venue of films and in the venue of novels or books, prepared me intellectually, prepared me mentally to grasp the many myriad concepts such as AI, artificial intelligence, transhumanism, all of the things that we're grappling with in our world today was introduced to me in science fiction novels and science fiction feature films. So it was a good intellectual processing tool, if you might want to use those words. Okay, so in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, there's that crescendo scene at the end of the movie. Any one of you that have seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. The aliens arrive on planet Earth. I believe they've landed in some giant spaceship. And all these aliens are encountering all these human beings, and it's night out, and the floodlights are hitting them. It's a very interesting scene, the way he filmed it visually and the way he captured the audio. And I'm going to give you an absolutely awful rendition of the audio. The majority of me is saying, Paul, you really don't want to do this because you're going to look like an idiot, even if you do it for a couple of seconds. And so, forgive me, but, you know, dun, 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 dun. No, that wasn't it, but I'm not a singer. I don't claim to be a singer. You know what I'm talking about. That it was like harmonizing music. It was like music put through a harmonizer. Dun, 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 something like that. You know, and I'm not getting it right, but you've heard that music. Okay, so there's that music as the aliens and the humans meet, and there's this Spielberg captures this inner longing of mankind through this harmonizer type music in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And what my immediate takeaway watching this in the theater was, this was Spielberg's unveiling of a kind of cinematic Day of Pentecost, a kind of cinematic upper room experience, which he probably didn't formalize intellectually and rationally, but most likely, if indeed he was traveling along those tracks, he formalized in his interior man, his subconscious mind, his creative mind or whatever. Because, you see, again, I didn't grasp this information through a conscious, rational, logical analysis of Spielberg's works. It just emerged as intuition or creativity may emerge. And so my feeling was, despite the multiplicity of messages that apparently Steven Spielberg layered into Close Encounters of the Third Kind, my takeaway was that he was in part, and he had many parts to deal with, in part Spielberg was giving us a kind of synthetic, a kind of New Age, if you will, a kind of New Age Day of Pentecost, where the earthlings, the human beings, and the aliens kind of gathered together as one, and it's celebrated via these harmonizing musical tones. And the harmonizing musical tones are heard throughout the movie as the lead character is driving frenetically, and you've seen the pictures of this giant mountain, but it's a giant flat-headed mountain where the aliens have crash landed or whatever. So my point here is that this was not the initial rational, logical message, perhaps, that Steven Spielberg wanted to present. But let's remember, when we're dealing with the concept of creativity, when we're dealing with the concept of the artist, the filmmaker, the writer, the screenplay writer, the musician, or any other of the endless pools of human creative endeavor, when creativity reaches its apex, no, I wasn't flashing you an Illuminati pyramid sign. No, I wasn't sneaking in a pyramid. You know, people get absolutely crazy out there. I was simply moving my hands upward with no intention, subconscious or otherwise, of communicating an Illuminati symbol. Now, the reason I have to speak about this in such a boring manner is because there's so many lunatics out there that if you make a hand gesture or whatever that is totally random, and it happens to even be close to an occultic symbol, some lunatic, some bozo on the bus of life will try to take an ambush you with a ridiculous accusation that you're in the occult or you're in the Illuminati. Let me assure you, I'm not in the occult. I'm not in the Illuminati. And the primary testimony would be, look at my paychecks. They're very modest, extremely modest, more modest than you could have possibly imagined. So if I signed a deal with the Illuminati, let me tell you something, they wouldn't be modest. Okay, we're going to be back in a moment. You're watching the Paul McGUIRE Report. I'm Paul McGUIRE. Visit paulmcguire.us. We'll be back in a moment to take a deeper dive into this world of an alien disclosure in a global culture. This is the Paul McGUIRE Report. Visit paulmcguire.us. Once again, you are now listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report. This is Paul McGUIRE. Okay, so Spielberg in his movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, let's just play some of that music for you. The alien music. Okay, so that music was famous during the time period that the movie was released. And I'm looking at the video feed of the movie, and it's almost, you know, again, with great filmmaking, there's always, it leaves the rational, intellectual, logical world. It uses that as tools, but then it embraces an intuitive, creative mindset. It thinks outside of the box. So whatever you think of Spielberg's totality in terms of politics or whatever, put that on the shelf for a moment. In this film, he did a very good job. And you see, what's always in these films, whether they mean to put them there or not, is there's always a very powerful spiritual component. Because no matter how much mankind or men and women try to run away from it, no matter how hard they try to distance themselves from the truth that there is an infinite personal living God of the universe, they can't escape the fact that there indeed is bedrock solid truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me, said Jesus Christ. So they can't escape the fact that there's an essential spiritual world, spiritual foundation to everything we do here on planet Earth. And so as the human beings meet the aliens, they're playing this music. And again, my takeaway when I initially saw this was it was kind of like a simulated virtual reality day of Pentecost meeting in the upper room. I don't believe that was the intention, but that was the takeaway. In the same manner, and I know I'm repeating myself, but this is a very important point, I believe anyway. When we move forward to Spielberg's film Disclosure Day, Emily Blunt plays a role of this woman who all of a sudden begins to blurt out this garbled, weird language. Again, I'm not trying to be disparaging, but the instant takeaway I had was that it was like she was speaking in some aberrant form of tongues, speaking in tongues in a bizarre way, not a normal way. So, that's eerie, and it was a very eerie scene. So what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say here is that as you and I, we need to position ourselves in the place of standing firmly on a foundation or worldview of truth. We shouldn't even be momentarily dislodged or momentarily threatened by some kind of potential announcement that they have found authentic alien spacecraft or authentic alien life or some kind of archaeological evidence or even living biological evidence. There are reports coming in right now that strange non-human species allegedly have been discovered deep in the jungles of South America, deep in the Amazon region and other regions. And nobody has an answer to how these biological creatures got there with non-human DNA, for crying out loud. Again, this mirrors the biblical account, especially in the book of Genesis, the biblical account in the book of Jude, and the biblical account written about in the book of Enoch. Now, before you freak out about me referencing the book of Enoch, yes, the book of Enoch is an extra biblical book of the Bible. But it is a book of the Bible that we are given permission from the Lord, when I say that I mean the Lord's Word, to go to the book of Enoch. In other words, the book of Enoch is sanctioned by God and God's Word. In the book of Jude, Jude references portions of the book of Enoch. So the very fact that the book of Jude, which is the Word of God, references the book of Enoch, that in effect makes it legitimate for us to study the book of Enoch as a source. Now, the book of Enoch is an account of Enoch and the fallen angels, sometimes referred to as the Enochian angels, that 200 of them that landed on Mount Hermon. And there's some very, very powerful takeaways regarding this. So we're going to be back in just a moment, and we're going to go through some of the takeaways given to us in the book of Jude and the book of Enoch. And together we're going to explore this so that we can stand on a firm foundation, and no matter what kind of evidence or what kind of video feeds or what kind of Operation Bluebeam is launched to create a synthetic or virtual reality in the skies using technology, or maybe an actual fake. Imagine this: you wake up, or in the middle of the night, there's a hole from the one end of the sky to the other. There's a giant simulated virtual holographic alien ET invasion coming from a spacecraft, or a whole litany of spacecraft. I mean, it's not that far away. Okay, you're listening to the Paul McGuire Report. Be sure to visit paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us.